Hey there, welcome to episode 75 of the Quaggling Sand audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We're recording this at 2:45 p.m. on Wednesday, April 16, 2025. Today's title, Keeping in Touch, something we used to do. I don't know if we still do. Correct one little, not a typo so much as a capitalization. If you're new to the Quaggling Sand audio program, it is typically stories, sometimes a tale, other times opinions. This particular episode will be a little bit of story and a little bit of opinion, but why not? We have not yet had a guest in our 75 episodes. I don't know if there would be a guest on this audio program. There might be. It might be interesting, but perhaps on some of my other audio programs, which we'll get to in a moment. Quaggling sand is itself a technical term I coined when I was very young, something like 4 years old, give or take. I don't know if I've gotten a definitive answer on that. But somewhere in those earlier days, if you ever lay on your foot or your hand or your arm, you find that it has become numb. You are unable to control it, much less feel it. And then as circulation returns and it begins to let you know that this is the case, you will experience quaggling sand. Some of your lay people in your friend groups may have referred to this as pins and needles, but no, quaggling sand. That's what it is. You can use that term freely and knowledgeably. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes. The show notes contain a summary, which I'll read to you, and in this week, 3 self-promotion links, no other homework for you to conduct your day with. So let's get to that. The summary of today's episode. It has never been easier to keep in touch with most, if not all, of the people you know. With instant and nearly instant video, audio, or plain old text flying around the globe through the internet or over the air. So do you? The links for today's episode. Again, shameless self-promotion. The first, buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, DANHUGO. You will find there a profile page. It's basically a link tree, but in free form. At the very top, you'll find some biographical information, some links to my various audio programs, including this one, links to various projects like GitHub repositories for organizations, and some of my favorite coffee beans, which are indeed Amazon affiliate links, so be aware. You're under no obligation to spend any money in any way at any of these 3 links I'm giving you right now. I use these to keep in touch with people so they can find what I'm working on outside of my own websites and whatnot, which really should exist one of these days. So buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo. You can get links at the very least to my other audio programs. At the very top of that page, when you visit buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo, you will see something about posts. I've linked it as well for the Buy Me an Update 5-minute or less microcast that I publish on Mondays, coming up on episode 22, if I recall correctly. This is a very brief rundown on the audio programming from the week before, and then any announcements or other topical things going into the near future. So check that out if you want. And finally, my other coffee site, Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/DanHugo. No spaces in there, DANHUGO, Ko-fi. I'm emphasizing that it is two syllables with a hyphen. Some people would say that's a dash. Either way, it's next to the 0 on your keyboard, most keyboards. Ko-fi.com/DanHugo. Textual updates, both Buy Me a Coffee and Ko-fi. Ko-fi allow for you to spend money if you want, but again, no obligation. Just you listening and partaking of these various links and other such content is payment enough. But if you do want to make a contribution to the tip jar, all proceeds through either of these platforms go toward the purchase of coffee beans or coffee accessories. These are what powers my endeavors. So let's get into it. Thinking back, depending on when you were a kid, you may remember getting some mail, paper mail, in a mailbox, addressed to you, whether from a grandparent, perhaps a friend, or maybe you sent away for some trinket in a cereal box promotion. It was always nice to get that little dopamine rush. We probably didn't call it that back then. Just, ooh, I got mail. What? That someone delivered an envelope or a package for you. And to be honest, it may not have mattered who it was actually from. It was there to be opened. It was yours. It had your name on it. What's more exciting than that, really? I was always fond of sending letters, in addition to ordering this or that from time to time. I was a big fan of cereal for breakfast, because who didn't want to get that free thing at the bottom of that cereal box now and then, or maybe even get a letter back from somebody, or hopefully the thing that you ordered. But yes, I was a letter writer, which is half of that getting mail equation between people. The problem, that equation too easily becomes unbalanced, and this is somewhat ironically more true than ever in this age of instant, nearly effortless communication. I wrote instant, nearly effortless communication. This is not a good thing, in my opinion. Why? We'll get to that sort of, but I will give you a hint. When we stop becoming used to communicating with people on a regular basis, we will believe whatever we receive and hear and think is true, and it eventually will be 100% artificial intelligence generated content for us. I don't mean to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but that's kind of happening now. Those tinny modem tones, think back to those days. I'm going to guess that most people had their first exposure to electronic messaging via fax machines. Some of us were eager to get modems and join bulletin boards and all the other nerdy stuff back then. Not necessarily, until AOL came along, the notion of dialing into a bulletin board and having a chat with someone was a fairly niche endeavor. Maybe you were connecting to services via Telenet or others. There were like 3 big services. Maybe you had a CompuServe account and you'd connect via Telenet, not to be confused with Telnet. That's a piece of software. But fax was one of those things that really caught on, and people were using them most often in the workplace, but they became more and more common because they were high utility and the prices tended to be going down. I myself never owned a fax machine, but I did use fax modems occasionally. If you did have a modem, you know that picking up the extension on the same line would get you an earful of squeaks and something that sounded like static from your television, kind of a shh. The squeaks and bleeps and whatnot, those are the handshake tones, by the way, and then the steady state communication sounds like static because it's basically a carrier tone, and then it moves around based on the bits that you're sending, so it's going to sound like static from a television. Shh. Same with fax machines, though you may not have had a fax machine at home in those early days, so you were unlikely or less likely to interrupt a fax communication. But if you're like me and you were a kid with a modem, I got my first modem when I was 16, then a common occurrence. Hey, I'm using the modem. Hang up the phone. Either way, those devices enabled the sending of real communications, not at speaking rates, but at typing rates or maybe drawing rates. You could draw a picture and fax it rather than describing it, and that was good enough more often than not. Not to mention typing a message out and faxing it. A modem on your computer upped the game, of course. Now you don't even have to print it out. You can just send it directly. And you could send whole files. You could send huge files by comparison at the time. Today, the truly huge files of today would be almost unbearable back in those old days. My first modem was 1200 baud. I don't even know what the number would be, a multiplier for the data rate scaling that has taken place over the years. 1,000 seems like a small number. 10,000 times faster, maybe. Crazy. Now, the natural evolution of communication using devices that shared our voice phone lines was, obviously, to get them their own phone lines. Why be able to interrupt a phone call? You can just get a second or a third or a fourth phone line and have your modem hooked up 24 hours a day. Have your fax machine available anytime, which basically makes sense. It's not even it's not something to scoff at necessarily. It's utility. Sure, a phone or five as in extensions. Wired to the wall was in fact a fact of life. Not a fact of live, a fact of life. Who types this stuff? Crazy. For 2 or 3 generations, you'd have phones. There were all manner of, the introduction of 3-way calling or the poor person version of that. I don't mean poor person, the poor man's version, as they say. It's the expression. If you didn't want to get three-way calling, you could just have an extension and someone could pick it up quietly and be on the call. But too often yells to mom to hang up the phone while a BBS discussion was going on, a file was being downloaded or whatever. And I will say that we were in exactly that predicament, which did lead to a second phone line for a modem when I was living there. And then when I went off to college, that was later used as a fax line, as more and more people in the construction industry were faxing to their designers, faxing floor plans and so on. Reverse evolution maybe, but a true story. So going mobile, though, that's the big thing. Obviously, and I'm not sure where the world ranks these as an authoritative list, but obviously the mobile phone has been a global game changer. So it may have been the number one, or it's up there, but it's certainly on the list in more ways than many consider. I know my mom in the construction industry was first in line to get a phone bolted into her car. And this was long before I had my phone. So of the nerds in the family, I think we know who wins. With the little pigtail antenna on the trunk somewhere on the back of the vehicle. And from the very first stone tablet on which it was etched, there is a mobile phone number that will still reach my mom for your kitchen and other designer needs that has remained unchanged essentially forever. The ability to communicate, number portability, obviously a very big, important point, milestone on the timeline. The ability to communicate on the move and eventually without the need for actual wired infrastructure. That is, whoever they are, they don't need to run wires to your home to enable you to conduct your communications and business and other such things. So you can now have your rural communities and entire huge, vast areas in the United States and elsewhere suddenly become connected without having to run wires. You run a cell tower. Cell towers typically have a 3 to 4 mile range, if I recall correctly. That may have been extended with the 5th generation radios that are out there now. So you could probably exchange range for bandwidth or something. So yeah, you don't really need to wire phone infrastructure, run the wires, pull cables, not essential anymore, although still a good idea. Fiber on pause most likely in favor of satellite communications for some reason, but running fiber opens up a lot of possibilities for a long time into the future. So we'll see where the world ends up on that. But these communication tools and technologies have opened up more and more opportunity and prosperity, not only because humans could speak to each other, but by the use of short message services all the way to today's high-speed mobile data connectivity. Actually conducting business and expanding their opportunities, all of us have benefited from these stupid devices in our pockets. The benefit ratio is maybe not what it could or was at one point. It seems like more and more trouble. Although the designs have reached peak creativity, I think. The Nokia phones, which I've talked about in a previous episode, were doing some interesting things. Now it's where's the lens going to be on your glass rectangle? Is there going to be a pinhole or on the front? And kind of lost our way in that, I think. Like planes, trains, and automobiles, these have made the world a much smaller place, and sometimes that's a benefit. Other times, maybe not as much. I myself obtained my first mobile phone while I was at Netscape, and I've described this in a past episode, at least one. And I had a digital pager shortly before that, maybe about a year or so before that, just so I could be reached by 5 or so people. Had to have one. This was my own introduction to the revolution in personal connectivity and communication on the horizon. And of course, working at Netscape, I was certainly seeing a version of the potential up close. The mobile web, or native applications, which is a debate for another time. Personally, I prefer the mobile web. That is a website and web tools and other such things that run, that can be used on a computer, a laptop, a tablet, a phone. There should, and any platform that has a mobile web browser can use these things. You're not saying, oh, sorry, you have to have an iPhone. So I think the ethos and the intent of the internet favors the philosophy of mobile web apps and platforms and so on, rather than native. But anyway, so the mobile web on the front of this connectivity, another game changer, just as the web browsers, Netscape Navigator, Internet Explorer, which was actually based on the same code as a Netscape Navigator was. That's a weird story for another time. But anyway, yeah, game changers, definitely. And then what about the platforms? Well, aside from Telenet and CompuServe and those who were in the early days, DARPA, those who were around for the early days of DARPA-driven internet messaging, the old BitNet, and so on, who didn't have a stack of who didn't have a stack of AOL CDs for use as coasters or flying objects or targets or as gateways to the internet for some. Those modems we were all getting, I had mine, as I said, and this new America Online service with its aggressive marketing became the way many people were introduced to online communications. Okay, for some it was an AOL floppy disk. Either way, some people got online and were greeted with the dopamine rush of
"You've got mail."
What a crazy time. You've got mail. It's anyway, definitely hitting the nerve that needs to be hit with that. Somebody wants to talk to me. I have spoken before about the nearly almost possible share video startup of which I was nearly a part for I was a part of it for a few minutes, but basically the 10 or so people sitting at the table all realized at the same moment that this was not the right mix of technologies and people and interest and business direction and so on. And it was before YouTube. YouTube came along later, several years later, and it was the right time for the earliest of early days of technology that people could actually use. And they've done okay since. It would have been less likely to be successful. That's just the way it was. So it's one of those things where, maybe we should have tried to press ahead anyway, but I think in hindsight, it wouldn't have worked at the time. The ability to self-publish video, not to mention the advent of modern-day pirate radio stations in the form of podcast, as conceived and enabled by Adam Curry and Dave Weiner, and maybe even some help from Steve Jobs. The name podcast lingers to this day, for better or worse, I'll say that. And couple those with this notion of ubiquitous connectivity has made publishing and consuming every notion anyone ever has, including a audio program about keeping in touch, a simple matter for most, and most definitely a thing to be monetized and perhaps corrupted a little bit, or maybe a lot. Social media platforms, MySpace, Orkut, Friendster, and the most awful and evil of all of them, LinkedIn. You were going to think Facebook, and you're not wrong, but LinkedIn is among the worst. Why? The guise of a professional network, which has been absolutely corrupted with, another time. And of course, microblogging platforms like Twitter and Google's long dead Buzz. And there were other platforms, other attempts at being something like Twitter. But often the first mover has the advantage, hence the name first mover advantage. But and Twitter pretty much does at this point, but not always the case. Sometimes first to the party means you find all of the potholes and all of the trouble, and the 10th comer to the game is the one that ends up doing better. But anyway, I digress. Of course, the microblogging platforms and others, Buzz and others, made the ability for the casual person who is not invested so much in creating like full form audio programs like this one, or producing actual video, or writing their thoughts in a blog post or an article or something similar. They can participate in conversations and trolling and whatnot without the trouble of setting up anything. No longer did you have to set up a Blogger account or get your own vanity domain. I have a few. All you had to do is make a creative username. You can create a creative username, but be creative in your username. There's some Twitter handles from the old days that are kind of silly now, but come up with a creative username and maybe a cool or enticing or ridiculous profile picture, and that's it. Then start typing away. The veil of anonymity makes many feel free to write and comment upon everything and anything without regard for decency or intelligence or knowledge or anything. It set the world back, in my opinion, despite the value in connecting people that can be found if you really look for it. These connections don't always get the attention of their hateful counterparts. But despite all that, I think we're entering net negative territory, which is a problem. And there's a reason that I say net negative so quickly, which is my assertion. for this episode, which we are getting to now, the fire hose. This is where we are now. Personally, I prefer email, but I also use the phone for voice communications, whether it could be the phone, something of like a cellular phone call, like an actual, the modern day plain old telephony service. I dial a phone number and I speak to someone at the other end. This is often for business, occasionally personal, but 95% of the time it's some business matter. Sometimes a messaging platform like Telegram or Signal to conduct a voice call. These are more convenient nowadays because you can have the same software on multiple devices. You can conduct a voice phone call, if you like, from your computer to someone's mobile phone, between mobile phones, between computers. And then there's also video. Now, video calls. Not really a big fan of Zoom, but a video platform like Jitsi, Jitsi, is the one I prefer. It's free and open source and so on. There's no real constraints to speak of. So a perfectly fine platform, but there are so many now. It's ridiculous. You can have a conversation with multiple people, and often we use them. For example, I have office hours for the Innovate for Vegas Foundation on Tuesdays. So we'll have a couple of people on and we have a conversation. It's usually more screen sharing than staring at cameras and so on. So it's mostly video for the purposes of information sharing, not looking at each other, and then conducting a group conversation. So these are totally fine. These are actual humans with actual conversation taking place. It's great. With the mobile web and so many services publishing mobile-friendly content, with or without the need for some native application, again, I prefer the mobile web, but it is what it is. We have a portal to just about anything, maybe almost everything in our pockets, available so long as we are charged up and in range of a cell tower or Wi-Fi access point. These are truly amazing times. Where we might be excited to get a letter in our mailbox addressed to us back in the old days, now we are turning off notifications emanating from our pockets at all hours from people and services we don't know. We have spam filters and phishing attacks and hacked accounts and all manner of blocks to maintain firewalls and spam filters and lists of troublemakers to keep out and so on. And for our adversaries to get around, to reach us. So there's always a new way to trick you, to get around your security precautions and your other measures, defensive measures, to reach us for all the wrong reasons, of course. And these are on top of people sending us stuff we might actually be interested in the form of advertisements of upcoming events or items on sale or whatever that we might want to pursue. And those newsletters we subscribe to but don't always read, and maybe the odd update about a package en route or delivered, reminders to pay some bills and so on. So there's a lot of messaging coming in. When I was in college, my roommate Kevin, one of us would often go and check mail if we weren't if we were not near the mailroom. I checked mail, and my other roommates or myself, we would bring back the mail for the others and say, I checked mail. Only mail from things, as Kevin used to say, not mail from people. So if you received mail from BMG or Columbia House about, hey, you want to buy 10 CDs for a penny? Or such things, a lot of promotional junk. So mail from things, getting mail from people, from actual humans that we want to converse with, is not as common as it's becoming less and less common, but it's barely common enough to rank it in the list. Under the giant pile, though, of email in our inbox, for example, you might find something from a person, someone you know or used to know, reaching out to say hello, or as I do now and then, reaching out to see if you still exist and if you actually respond to indicate that. And I don't even know if there's a difference anymore. If you don't respond, I assume you don't exist, basically. Text messaging is almost useful, but probably not great for the, hey, long time, because phone numbers change, people stop keeping track of old contacts. They may have lost their phone, which, anyway, some people don't have their contacts backed up, or sometimes they just throw everything away. They delete this or that. Who knows? So contacting someone from a mysterious phone number or reaching out to someone at a phone number you used to have can have mixed results. But an email address is one of those things that sometimes we just hang on to forever. I have the same email address that I had in 2002 when Gmail first launched, and I have the same business email address that I had when I registered my business domain in 1996. So if you want to reach me at my oldest email address, it's been around since 96. I still have it. There you go. So email, despite phone numbers changing, text messaging not working out, email is one of those things that you can basically keep for free forever. Text messaging is not the great way to go then. So, but email. And then you can send someone paper mail, but what if they moved? And then, if it's been beyond a year, it won't get forwarded. And who knows who's going to read your intimate thoughts about who knows what. And nobody likes receiving mail anymore. I don't know when that flip occurred, but mail from a person. I got to open this envelope. So many people use LinkedIn or Facebook or maybe Instagram or WhatsApp as their primary contact method that you also must use their favorite method to communicate with them. I actually had WhatsApp, WeChat, Line, Skype, and of course LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and probably more. These are applications that were installed on my phone at one point just to keep in touch with various individuals. Today, if you don't answer your own email, you may not exist, again, in my opinion, but I think that's generally true. Especially if you say you have an email address. If you choose not to respond to it, then you don't need to be in my list of contacts in any way. And yes, some of these services I mentioned, you can use the mobile web. I will occasionally use LinkedIn on my phone to add a new contact, which I do more or less and less frequently now, more rarely, I was going to say. You can access Twitter from a mobile web browser. I haven't logged into Facebook in years. TikTok, no thanks. WhatsApp, deleted and closed account a long time ago. WeChat, I don't really talk to anybody in China anymore. Line, I was communicating with one person. That didn't seem worthwhile. Skype actually shut down now. So all these are either not worth the trouble or you can use a web version on your mobile device. So no reason to keep track of all these things. And I use them less and less, to be honest. So we're in the last section, I promise. Filters and the way forward. Now with AI tools, not only reading and summarizing for us, but authoring and acting for us. You can actually have an email, write an email and figure out who to send it to. And then that person can use an AI to receive the email, read it, and even respond. We may find ourselves less and less a part of what's going on and using these various technologies and tools and platforms I've mentioned here. Like, why would you bother LinkedIn, anything? LinkedIn has its own AI tools. It can generate posts for you, can tune them, make them more appealing. Maybe you can have AI comments and so on. Yeah, I guess that leaves you to sit on the beach and sip a drink. I hope not. I hope that's not the future of us. Well, I mean, who doesn't like sitting on the beach? But it's the way we will conduct human-to-human communications, perhaps, which we are perhaps too busy for. Maybe more likely we're not creative enough for. We don't really want to think so much. I've literally talked to people who say, I had AI generate the copy for this mailer I was going to send out. Okay. Too busy or not creative enough? Probably both. I think eventually the spam filters that made email less of a chaotic and risky communication medium will need to be modernized, and that's coming along. There are various ways to do this that are kind of functional to filter out incoming engagements from things. Thanks, Kevin. AI chatbots evolved to appeal to your many interests, to political opinions, or human needs to entice you to spend money or give up on your secrets and give them out. Any number of possibilities. And the worst of them, people you know or think you know, having their favorite AI correspond with you rather than them doing it themselves. Do you AI them back? Do you pretend to participate with your own human responses and see where it goes? Maybe they'll pick up eventually. Oh, I see you've been chatting with Claude or Gemini or whatever. Pick your favorite. ChatGPT needs a name, I think. I don't know what they're... yeah. The worst of them, though, people, the people that don't bother, they just don't. They let AI do it, or they just don't respond at all. And so what do you do with those people? I just let them go. I have a new spam folder, and I put them in it, and then I stop responding. And by the way, I'll inject here, my least favorite of humans who do take the time eventually to say, oh, that's right, I haven't emailed you in years. I'm going to be in Vegas next week. And you can fill in the blank. To me, that's one of the most insulting ways of conducting human interaction. I will contact you at my convenience. For myself, and I think I'm about to restate that here, for myself, having been in the front row for this evolution of communication, certainly I was not around when television was invented and went from black and white to color, though I have worked in the production of television compatible analog content by way of TrueVision. And I wasn't around for the first telephone, certainly not the first telegraph, but I've been in there for some of these interesting times. And thanks to the work I do, I've been, again, in the front row for some of it. I'm tired of people who respond or reach out on their terms only when they need something or in general at their convenience, making for too many one-sided interactions. The LinkedIn connections list is largely useless unless I'm selling something or pitching my personal brand. Or maybe I want to be on the receiving end of those, which is essentially the bulk of the content on LinkedIn. We as a society have adapted too much to the algorithmic engagement that drives our interactions, and I myself am tired of it. I would say there has to be a better way, but we already had that, and we traded in for what we have now, which I would argue is less. So I thought I was touching on this, but essentially when you may see this as well. If I send you an email or whatever form of communication, but email among my favorite, and you decide to wait a year or two, and then you say, oh, I meant to reply to this, I'm going to be in Vegas. What you're telling me is you only want to communicate with me when you find it convenient or when there's some value that you are looking for, not just for the purposes of communicating. I get this all the time. I've lived in Vegas for 12 years. In August, it'll be 12 years. And so I really don't have a place for that. But that is generally where communications have landed in these modern times. There's so much flying at us. I'm not offering that as an excuse. I'm certainly not apologizing for people. But if you want to communicate with people only when you need something from them, they will pick up on that eventually. Now, you may continue that because they may feel exactly the same way. I guess I'll respond to you because I'm going to need something from you at some point. But for the most part, and especially in my experiences here in Vegas, those people will not respond when you need something, even if you've responded when they need something. So at the end of the day, all the vastness of communication tools and technologies and platforms, the ability to communicate with almost anyone on the planet at any time, in real time. And by the way, I had a friend in Turkey, whom I met when a group of Turkish students were visiting the United States. They were staying at East Dorm when a summer dorm was West. So I was working on campus in the engineering stockroom, met a few Turkish students. They went back home, and then we had a letter writing campaign going back and forth. So mail, production by street, mail from Turkey, pictures, long letters. Here's what's going on. And we had that familiarity with the United States. And then there was the, hey, when you come to Turkey and so on. Phone calls to Turkey back then, and they were challenging from Harvey Mudd College because their phone system was from the 18th century. But the communication was still long and delayed because of satellite comms, I suppose. So you'd speak and then you'd get noise and you'd hear a voice back and it was total chaos. And that was a long time ago, but every year there seems to be a continued improvement, evolution in the way people can communicate, and the obstructions to communication are at this point basically political. Somewhat economic perhaps, but mostly political. Who are you allowed to talk to and under what circumstances? So at the end of the day, the barriers to communication are either just too much stuff. The fire hose is pointed at you and you're getting too much stuff. That's difficult to believe if you have any wherewithal to say, oh, let me take the email from people that I know and put them off to the side, email or other communications, so that I will actually get to those. My inbox was so full, I missed your email. That can happen. That totally can happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But the other thing is, I don't need anything from this person. Why should I bother spending my time? And that is the sort of thing that is reprehensible, and it's probably an indicator of the worst to come. When it comes to just basic social interaction, I think we're losing that, and it's unfortunate. And I've been watching it unfold myself. And that is where we're going to leave today's episode. keeping in touch. You can keep in touch with me by just listening to these audio programs. If you ever want to be a guest on FFS, for example, or the Impresario's audio program, or when Hugo Floss relaunches for real, I'm hoping to get some interaction there. We'll just see what happens. But don't be a stranger in general. You can always email me. You know my email address. If you do, you should use it. If you don't, well, I guess I can give it out at some point. You can always send email to media@quaglingsand.com if you want. That will get to me. And we'll leave it there. Thanks for listening. Go have coffee. I'm going to myself. Bye-bye.